One critical example of noise pollution is about a particular bird called scrub jay, which spreads seeds of a particular tree called pinyon pine tree. So if the environment is a little louder, it will move away from that place about 20 to 30 kilometers, and a single bird basically seeds about 3,000 to 4,000 pine acorns a year. That means that if we actually keep the environment noisier where these birds live, it will take about 100 years plus of consequences right now. So we might lose a little bit of land that's basically rich in trees because of such noise pollution. So this is one example, and I have a final word about it. We humans also have, people who are synesthetes. So much, Hari and Mohit, for the opportunity. Coming back to what Mohit said, there is a video of a wild parrot dancing to a music that was played. I remember just now that I listened to it some time ago. So there is some animals that have an inherent understanding of musical grammar. So from that on, I'll come back to this book. This book has an immense amount of information that has been gathered over a century on the senses of animals. That forms one of the major part of the book. But the major theme with which this book is curated is called an Umwelten, defined by a professor of zoology called Jacob von Uexküll in 1909. So Umwelt is basically defined as a, you can take this room as example. So we have several windows. So an animal's body is defined as an Umwelten, with which it sees every garden with a different window. So each window is a sensory, gateway to the world. So it can be an olfactory window, it can be a ocular window, or it can be a tactile window. So everything gives a different picture about the garden that you see. So Umwelt, in our world, we imagine that the world, we see it in fullness. So we have a strange illusion that we see the world in its fullness, but we only get to see a sliver of the entire fullness of reality. And that becomes very gravitating once you start reading this book. So just to give an example, animals are very sophisticated in how they see the world, and it's very hard for us to imagine how the animal sees through its own senses. So our senses are inadequate to understand how the animal sees, and in most of the part of the research that has been done is to try to understand a glimpse of how the animal sees the world. So you will always have to require an imaginative leap from our own senses to understand how the animal actually sees the world. So the book is divided into 12 chapters based on different senses. It starts with sense of smell, taste. I would just give a couple of examples. So if I were to give a thumb impression on a small slide and keep it exposed to the weather for about a week, and I let the dog sniff, and after it has been set to about 20 kilometers apart, and the dog can still sense it and then reach it. So this is one such an example that how far the olfactory senses have been exemplified in some of the creatures that we actually come across daily. So for example, color. There is a creature called a mantis shrimp, peacock mantis shrimp. It has about 12 different kinds of receptors. It's easy for us to think in monochrome or in dichromatic vision, because you can apply filters, and we are trichromats, we can see the world in full color. There are tetrachromats who are among us, who could see the world in different way. So they could tell apart colors much more effectively than us, which we may not be able to comprehend how it is even been done. So tetrachromats are you might not even have the imaginative leap to understand how they see the world. And this creature has about a vision that spans the entire range of a color spectrum. So, and there are tree hoppers, the small tiny insects, which actually communicate continuously through other tree hoppers in the environment via vibrations, which we may be completely unaware unless we tap into them. So there are several examples of different senses that's been mentioned in this entire book. So every chapter, if you read and then you sit for some time and contemplate and then see the world, you will see the world completely differently. And that tells us that how different these species are, and how much more the world is immense for them and for us. So we may not be able to sense the electric fields of sharks and platypuses. We may not be able to get to know how the robins and sea turtles understand the magnetic fields. We may not be able to contemplate how a rattlesnake sees the infrared radiation from its prey and so on. But the fact is that nothing needs to be sensed in its fullness. So nothing needs to be sensed in its fullness, because our Wimbledon is limited to what we are caring about for this nature. But what is innately human is that we could contemplate about other species of Wimbledon, and that's become important for us to care for them, because we cohabit our planet with them. So why should anybody should read this book? So I'll just get back to a couple of slides and then tell you the important aspect. This is the peacock mantis shrimp that I told you about. So this is what is our range of human vision, and this is what the peacock mantis shrimp's vision range. You can see that it contains an entire spectrum. We are called trichromats. They are actually it's called, they have 12 different spectrum of colors. So why should we read this book? There are some animals which can survive only in darkness, and we actually pollute the entire place we live in with light. And light means a lot to them, whether it is survival or death. So if we understand their Umwelten better, we could actually save some of the species that we live in. So it also means that some of the pollinators might go away if we have so much of light. So that's one aspect of it. And we also are very loud. So for example, whales sing across the ocean, and the more transport that happens in the ocean takes them to different routes which they are not aware of, and the source of food that they get might also be limited. So a noise pollution. And one critical example of noise pollution is about a particular bird called scrub jay, which spreads seeds of a particular tree called pinyon pine tree. So if the environment is a little louder, it will move away from that place about 20 to 30 kilometers. And a single bird basically seeds about 3,000 to 4,000 pine acorns a year. That means that if we actually keep the environment noisier where these birds live, it will take about 100 years plus of consequences right now. So we might lose a little bit of land that's basically rich in trees because of such noise pollution. So this is one example, and I have a final word about it. So we humans also have, people who are synesthetes. They see color when you speak about musical tones. They sense taste when you tell about textures and so on. This is a specialty in humans, but it is a norm in animals. That means that their Umwelten is, kind of mixed with a lot of senses that is very incomprehensible for us in many ways. So they see the world completely differently than us, and to stand a chance of knowing anything what an animal sees, we have to know everything about the animal. So this book is an excellent compilation of things. So that we have to care about. We don't have a planet B, and we have to take all the amends to save our fellow species that we live in. We constantly, kind of pollute the space with light. We constantly pollute the space with sounds, and we also kind of intoxicate the soil and the ocean with molecules that these organisms have never seen before. So plastic pollution is one. You can see these things. So I'll stop at that point. Why we should read? We'll have an immense understanding of how these animals see the world, and that's exciting because Professor E.O. Wilson from Harvard University coined the word called biophilia. We have an inherent interest and love for the nature. So that's what it means. So, reading this, it will kindle the interest in nature, and also will let us think about how we could actually do something about saving these species. So I have some book recommendations. This is also another book which came at the same time when this book was published, which also has similar topics, which compares humans with the extraordinary senses. And some other books that I have read also speak about how different are they conscious? Some of the questions that is widely pondered upon among ethologists and neuroscientists. So I'll stop here, and these are some of the book recommendations along with this book. I hope you'll enjoy reading this book. It's a pleasure to have all those things with us compiled to for us to know more about the immense world that we have with us. Thank you.